Have you ever thought about how the relationship that you have with money impacts the way that you handle it? Your beliefs and attitudes about money didn't come out of nowhere. And the best way to understand them is to do some intentional introspection. Hey friends, it's Tegan here. If you'd asked me to tell you my money story when I was 22, I wouldn't have even known what that question meant. And yet, that was the age I started my first proper job and started earning a salary. I was young, clueless, and suddenly in possession of a regular sum of money, as well as a growing list of expenses. I had to figure out how to handle my new reality, and quickly. Can you relate? Don't worry, I'm going to walk you through how to find your feet in the world of money. But first, now that I actually can articulate it, here's my story. Growing up, my financial situation was different to a lot of my friends at school. My parents divorced when I was young, and that made for an interesting duality during my childhood. My dad is a successful business person, and he didn't spare any expense in making sure that I received high-quality education and that I had a solid foundation to start my adult life. The incredible privilege that I had growing up is not lost on me. I am forever grateful for everything that both my parents were able to provide for me. But having said that, my mom worked shift jobs that didn't pay very well. She was forced to be ultra frugal and often bought me secondhand clothes and toys in a bid to save money. Her mom grew up in war times, and her dad, while he earned a lot, was unfortunately very careless with money. These attitudes affected my mom and trickled down to me as a child. Ultimately, both the approaches of my parents had an impact on my relationship with money. When I was a student, I found myself driving across the whole of Cape Town to save a few rands on a piece of second-hand furniture, but then occasionally also indulging in a really expensive item of clothing that I definitely didn't need. I found this to be a confusing and stressful reality. But it wasn't until much later that I actually did the work to understand how I got there. I realized that I needed to reflect on the past in order to deconstruct and reconstruct the ideas that I had about money so that they could serve me better. And so, back to where we started. How on earth do you figure out why you feel the way you feel, whether that's stressed, scared, or maybe even excited when you look at your bank balance? I've read and listened to so much on this topic, and I've compiled everything that I've learned into a nice, pretty exercise that you can download for free to help you understand your money story. I'll link it down in the comments. There are no right or wrong answers. It's about exploring your psychology and figuring out what's working for you and what you need to throw out and replace. To nudge you along, I'm going to go through a few questions with you and share my answers. Question 1. What traditions did your parents or family have that involved money? How do you think those traditions impacted your perception of money in different contexts? A good example that I can think of is that with my mom, there was a very clear set of guidelines when we went to restaurants. I was always allowed to order one drink that cost money, like a milkshake or juice, but thereafter I had to switch to tap water. We also never ordered starters or desserts, only mains. This system taught me two main things. Firstly, how to plan carefully, but secondly, it taught me to approach certain situations with an air of restriction and self-control. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, but there were definitely parts of my life where I was using this approach even though it wasn't the best approach for those situations. It was really good for me to reflect on this lesson and to understand when to use it and when to discard it. Second question. What are some of your earliest or most prominent memories relating to money? It can be about earning, saving, or spending money. I remember when I was in grade 7. At my school, that was the grade where you had to start wearing blazers. My mom couldn't afford to buy a brand new blazer for me, so she bought a second-hand one, but it was really faded. Being resourceful, she bought fabric dye, and we dyed it in an attempt to make it look better. The dye worked, but of course, my blazer didn't look anything like my friends' blazers. Instead of the grayish green it was supposed to be, it was a rather bright, in-your-face green. I was so embarrassed, but I had to wear it because I had no other option. This experience shaped a big part of my understanding about how money can impact the way you feel around other people. It made me believe that I was inherently different to my friends because I didn't have as much money as they did. I think the rebellious child in me also started rejecting the idea that money was a good thing. I started to look down upon my peers for being able to buy things like expensive clothes. When I was doing this introspection exercise a few years ago, I realized immediately that this was a lesson I absolutely had to unlearn. If I believed I was only worth as much as my bank balance, or that money was a bad thing, how was it ever going to work in my favor? Changing the correlation in my head between my money and my self-worth was probably the most impactful lesson that I took from this exercise. Okay, speaking about the relationship that you have with yourself, there is a growing body of scientific evidence that shows that when someone feels connected to their future self, they are more likely to care about their future self's needs and welfare. What does being connected to your future self mean, though? It's about seeing that person as the same person that you are today, with the same core identity and values, not some random stranger that you'll spontaneously meet at your next birthday. So, the third question I want to share with you is about looking forward to future you. Imagine yourself in 20 years. What are your hobbies and what do you spend your time doing? What do you thank your present self for doing? I picture myself living in a nice green area in the winelands outside Cape Town. I'll be self-employed, going into schools working with teenagers, helping them to navigate the transition between being a child and being a fully functioning adult. I'll teach them things that schools don't usually teach, like how to do taxes and how to save money and how to invest and how to... Does this sound familiar? When I was doing this exercise a while ago, I realized that I wasn't actually doing anything that would get me closer to this dream that I have. But since then, I've started this YouTube channel. Hopefully, I will be thankful to my present self for doing that, as hopefully it would have helped me to gain credibility and experience. That's the power of feeling connected to your future self. It prompts you to make choices today that will benefit you tomorrow. If these questions struck a chord with you, download the worksheet and go through them at your own pace. It's purely for your benefit. But if you're comfortable sharing your insights, I would love to read them in the comments. Perhaps, like me, your grandparents grew up during the war and were taught to chase the best bargains and save every last leftover for tomorrow. Yes, even if that was your grandparents, not your parents, the mindset takes longer than one generation to get out of the system. Perhaps your parents are absolutely terrified of the stock market because they got caught up in the crash and burn of 2008. But that doesn't have to be you. Check out my latest guide to ETFs and start empowering yourself to do better. Until next time, bye!